Good evening. Welcome to Voices. I'm Mark Halfmoon. Tonight is our first program in the new year, 2007, which I was kind of having some high hopes for before they hung that dude over there, because now I'm a little nervous. You know, it feels like one of those historic moments that shit starts all going wrong once the Archduke gets assassinated and things like that. Anyway, maybe it's just me. However, what I want to do tonight is talk about a subject that is near and dear to all of us, because all of us human beings are made up of what? What is it, 85, 90% water? And our brains are certainly made up of water. And it's been said many times that water is going to be in the 21st century what oil was in the 20th century. In other words, there may be wars fought over it. People are going to be struggling for a really basic necessity that, next to air, is the most essential necessity that we human beings, and in fact all biological creatures require. So, in talking about water, I have a guest with me tonight, Douglas Deach. How you doing, Douglas?
Very well.
Good, good. Douglas is here with us tonight because he's been involved in quite some time with some cases that highlight his interest in, his alarm, I should say, in what locally is happening with our water. And what I would like to do, I've heard you speak many times, we've done programs in the past that you were on like many years ago, but I'd like to try to make it understandable to the people of Santa Cruz County why you're alarmed by our current water situation and what we could possibly do about it. So Douglas Deach, you represent an organization, a nonprofit organization, Monterey Bay
Conservancy in Santa Cruz.
That's right.
Let's call it a water policy think tank.
Okay.
And I'd like to thank you very much and the community television for giving me this opportunity to appear on here. This is kind of a follow-up to the opportunity I was just given by the editorial board of the Santa Cruz Sentinel to run a two-part op-ed piece, as the title of your show indicates. It was titled Our Inconvenient Truth, and it deals with how we're using up our water resources here in not the wisest way, I would submit.
Well, first let me start with how did you get involved with, how long have you lived around here, and how did you first get interested in the issue of our own local groundwater?
Well, I've lived here since 1970 in the mountains, and my sensitivity to water really came as a result of when I first moved to my first house in 1970, I had an independent water well, which is something that I was never confronted with before. And then I came to appreciate that how we manage the water and how I was managing the water in my well was going to be pretty critical on how long that water was going to be sustainable in that well for my family and I to use. And as years went by and I became more involved in the community, actually I'd be probably shuddering in a seat right now, but the person that really got me interested in this is Marty Wormhout, Gary Patton's and Andy Schifrin. And when I first was concerned about this issue and running for supervisor, Andy suggested that water in Aptos area that I live is something I should probably get interested in, and that was around 1994. And as I investigated how we're using our water, I became very alarmed about it, because basically we're using up our water supply at a very alarming rate, overusing it 90% agriculturally and at a 200% overdraft, which causes saltwater intrusion to come into our groundwater supply and essentially eliminate
this is what I was going to ask you.
A huge amount of our water resource annually.
What do you see, at least locally, starting locally here, because there's a lot of things we could talk about internationally and nationally about water, but locally, what do you see as our main problem here, and can you describe it and break it down for folks so that they understand what's going on with our water in the central Monterey Bay area?
Well, I think the first thing that you said at the top of the show, that water becoming a very, very critical issue now and in the future is a very accurate statement. And fortunately for us in our area, we're blessed with a very, very abundant groundwater supply. So it's not that we have a scarcity of water, but it's just how we choose to use our water supply. And we're not using it sustainably. And the economic model of our community, which is based primarily in agriculture and tourism, particularly agriculture, which uses 90% of our water, as I mentioned, is not a model that we can sustain.
You're saying that agriculture uses, in Santa Cruz County at least, 90%, or are we talking about Palo Valley?
I'm more talking about regional, because just
regional.
Like I put this picture up on the wall over there of the Monterey Bay, taking a satellite photo image. And I don't know if you could zoom in on that, because I think the point I would like to make from this picture is that as one looks at the Monterey Bay from a satellite or from the air, really what we're looking at is one natural system, one natural drainage basin, where interactive in a number of different ways. But if you look out into the bay there, you see the Monterey
Hold it
Canyon.
right there. Yeah.
And so there's been a lot of water, and there is a lot of water that comes off these mountains and goes into the bay. And unfortunately, the way the political situation has developed around here, there are lines on that map there that you can't see that represent different political jurisdictions of water agencies and different political and economic interests that divide these water basins up in a way that is not providing regional management for sustainable use of the underlying resource, the groundwater basin.
Okay, you said we have a lot of water around here. We have a lot of resources for water, and yet we're in danger of losing water or not having enough. What is the problem? Where's the water going, and why are we in danger of losing it? Why are we in danger of contaminating our groundwater well supply?
Well, in 1984, the biggest water basin that we have in our part of the county, which is from the basically Pajaro River north, is called the Aromas Red Sands, and it's the Pajaro Valley Water Management Agency. And the agency was developed by the law. The Pajaro Valley Water Management Act was developed by Henry Mello back in the 80s. And what it did was it created an agency which necessarily the majority of that agency, the controlling majority, was comprised of agricultural interests. And the mission of that agency by the law was to provide all the water that is needed by the terms of this act in this area. However, the amount of water that's being used there is, as I said, 200% more than we can sustainably use.
In other words, 200% more water is being drawn out of the aquifers underground than is sustainable.
Yeah, that's correct.
Meaning that there's a certain amount that we could take out of the aquifers, we people who live up top, and it would still be sustained.
Yes.
But we're taking, what, 3 times more?
3 times more. And 90% of that is used agriculturally. So effectively, in our area, in the Pajaro area, the primary crop there is agricultural crop is a berry crop. And the vast majority of that berry crop is exported. So essentially what we're doing is using our groundwater, injecting it in a berry product, and exporting this groundwater. Now, if we were only using the water sustainably, we wouldn't be exporting more than is being resupplied to the basin by the natural operation of this natural system. But since we are taking 3 times as much as is sustainable, the water that we take out is replaced in the ground by salt water, which is drawn from the ocean, and then that amount of the storage is permanently lost and effectively exported in berry product.
So when we pump water out of the aquifers under the ground to use for living, 90% of the water that we draw out of the aquifers goes to growing food, growing berries, and other food sources. But the point is that berries are a very water-intensive crop, and that water being used is going into these things that are being exported all over the world, these berries, and we are not necessarily getting any compensation for it as residents of the area. It's the companies that are growing the berries and exporting them.
Well, yes, there is a economic revenue that is produced by this production. But when you weigh in the cost of the production and the non-living wage jobs that are created and the different subsidies that are required to support this production, this model of the economy, I don't think that these are, at a sustainable level, it would be okay, but going beyond what a reasonable agricultural carrying capacity is, which we have done, is not sustainable, and it's what's basically done in third world countries, where you use the most valuable resource and export it, and unsustainably, and then when that plays out, you have nothing left. We don't have a sustainable economy and something that we can, carry forward with sustainably into the future.
Well, you know, something that strikes me about that is when we have these droughts, and even when we don't have droughts, we have a lot of publicity, some of it put out by government agencies, that say we should conserve water, that we users, we who take showers, who drink water, who water lawns and things like that we need to really conserve so that we can have water. Now I'm hearing that 90% of the water, that we could be putting bricks in our toilets and buying new shower heads, and we're only affecting 10% of the water use. In times of drought and things like that, what happens to that 90% of the water? Do they also have cuts?
Well,
in their
well,
use?
I like to point it out this way. If you were to get rid, we're using 200% overdraft, 3 times as much water as we can.
As we should.
Yeah. If you were to get rid of every human from our region, every bit of human activity, every tourist, every resident, UC, every bit of human activity except for berry production, then we'd only be at a 100% overdraft. So it's not people. And also the scale of the amount of water resource that we lose every year, like City of Santa Cruz now is in the process of addressing their water problem shortage by building a desalination plant.
The City of Santa Cruz.
The City of Santa Cruz, not the pilot plant they're building, but the regular plant that they want to build. In order to keep up with the water resource loss every year that's occasioned basically by our agricultural production, we would have to build 7.5 desal plants every year at a cost of $300 million before operations and maintenance, just to keep even with the amount of resource loss that we are losing, basically exporting in the form of berry product. So bricks and toilets, low flush toilets, our humans here make very judicious, frugal use of water. I mean, the City of Santa Cruz has very good per capita use of water. It's not that humans are not using water in a reasonable, sustainable way. It's just the model of our agricultural economy is exceeded what is reasonable, what is a reasonable carrying capacity.
Well, what would you suggest that we do at this point, the point that we're at today? Because, well, let me give a little bit of history about your involvement with this whole issue. Back in the 80s, and the 90s, 1990s, right? There was a study or some kind of report delivered to the County Board of Supervisors by their staff in the, which department?
Environmental health.
That said that essentially we were facing a groundwater emergency. Is this right?
Well, in 1998, the first comprehensive groundwater management resources report was developed after a 2-year study by county staff. This was reported to the Board of Supervisors, and they reviewed and accepted this report.
And that was in
March of 1998.
Okay.
And that documented that all county groundwater basins were in overdraft. Every county groundwater basin was in overdraft, and that there was a saltwater intrusion resource loss of 15,000 acre feet per year, which is the 7.5 desal plants per year that I'm talking about. Now, in 1987, probably the most effective environmental supervisor we ever had, the father of the environmental movement in Santa Fe, Gary Patton, Stanford law grad, actually drafted many environmental ordinances, one of which was called the well ordinance. And in this well ordinance, what it said was that the Board of Supervisors shall declare a groundwater emergency when 3 tests are met. 1, that the water basin is in overdraft. 2, where the further pumping in this basin might cause further problems. And 3, that there may be a possibility of a decrease in water quality by saltwater intrusion. Now, that was the test of the 1987 well ordinance. 1998, it was established that all groundwater basins were in overdraft. The second part of the test, that more pumping might cause a problem. And there was not a possibility of saltwater intrusion, but there was, in fact, an actual resource loss, according to Mark Reisner, author of Cadillac Desert, the worst in the world that he was aware of, 15,000 acre feet a year. So as of 1998, the test for declaring a groundwater emergency has been met and surpassed. Now,
was a groundwater emergency declared?
Well, the supervisor, who is now Superior Court judge, Judge Almquist, at that point in time, agendized. He wrote up a 5-page memorandum. And by the way, all of the documents and substantiation that I refer to on this show can all be found on begentlewiththeearth.com, .net, or .org, and along with some graphics.
Yeah, I believe we have that website. Yeah, there it is.
So if anyone would care to check on there and ask any questions about that, I'd be happy to answer them. But in 1998, Judge Almquist, Supervisor, then Almquist agendized this matter, voted for the emergency, as did Supervisor Butts, who was an attorney.
He voted that there was a groundwater emergency in Santa Cruz County.
Well, no, it was just only in Pajaro. He limited it just to Pajaro.
Okay.
But he agendized it and requested that voted for a public hearing to declare a groundwater emergency. He was joined by Supervisor Butts, who was an attorney, and Supervisors Wormhout, Bellegarde, and Simons voted against it. So it was not declared. And consistently, since that time in 1998, I have been periodically appearing before the board requesting that they recognize their ministerial duty under the ordinance to declare a groundwater emergency. I filed the grand jury complaint on this. I have filed a lawsuit earlier in the year 2000 that was, there was a statute of limitations problem with that. And so consistently during this period of time, I've been requesting that they recognize their responsibility to declare this emergency. Now, October 24th, the Board of Supervisors, rather than observing and doing their duty under the ordinance,
October 24th of this
2006,
year. Yes.
they have now attempting to change the ordinance.
Okay, I should say, at least I don't have all the exact wording, but according to the legislation that was promoted or written by Gary Patton back in the
the well ordinance.
When was this?
1987.
In 87. It's section 7.70.130. It currently requires the Board of Supervisors to declare a groundwater emergency if a basin is in overdraft, regardless of whether the overdraft condition is already being addressed. So, according to this law, the supervisors should declare an emergency, is what you're
That's
saying.
the current law. That has been the law since 1987. And consistently, since that date, the Board of Supervisors has been not observant of their ministerial duty under this ordinance, which requires them to declare a groundwater emergency. That
And
statement is correct.
you said that just recently that there's been some attempt to change the language of what defines.
Yeah, well, what they've been trying to do for the last 3 years, actually, is rather than observe their obligation of the ordinance, change the
meaning
law.
the Board of
The Board of
Supervisors.
Supervisors changed the law. Now,
changed the law.
the Board of Supervisors enacts many laws, and they just enacted one on monster house ordinance, and it's basically selective enforcement. What law are they going to enforce? What law are they not going to enforce? What's the point of passing these laws if we're not going to enforce them?
Well, okay. Well, apparently, what it says here, that I guess the suggested change to that language would be that a groundwater emergency shall be declared in areas demonstrated to be experiencing a groundwater overdraft exceeding the safe yield in order to prevent further depletion and degradation of water resources where such degradation threatens public health, safety, and welfare of the community, and here's what's being added, and where the Board of Supervisors finds that adequate measures are not already being taken to alleviate the overdraft situation. So, what I'm saying is that the change seems to be that it's not just enough to, that the basin is in overdraft regardless of of whether the condition is being addressed. It's saying that if the Board of Supervisors finds that adequate measures are being used to address it, that it wouldn't be an emergency.
Yeah, that's called discretion. That's a subjective as opposed to an objective test. It allows the subjectivity of the particular supervisors to determine, if there's being, adequately addressed. For example, they could determine that if we put bricks in everybody's toilet, then that adequately addresses a 15,000 acre-foot resource loss, and that would be within their authority, under their discretion, to make that determination. So basically, it's a way for them to, not do anything.
So you're saying that the Board of Supervisors has the discretion if this has not been passed already?
No, it has to go through environmental review and then also be reviewed by the Coastal Commission.
So if it is passed, that they would no longer be required, as Gary Patton wrote when he was in the Board of Supervisors, they would not be required to declare a groundwater emergency just if there's overdraft. They'd have to determine that adequate measures are not being taken, right?
Yeah. It would basically legitimize what they've been doing illegitimately for the last 8 years,
Really?
ex post facto.
Okay, then let's get, okay, what happens if a groundwater emergency is declared? What goes into effect? What kind of things that wouldn't go into effect because if the supervisors find that adequate measures are taken and it does not go into effect, this emergency, what's the difference between an emergency going into effect and one not going into effect?
Well, this is a matter of process, okay? And one of the arguments that the supervisors make against declaring the emergency is that it's really not within the supervisor's purview to control water in the districts, and these agencies should do it. And so they're kind of like delegating this responsibility and saying, oh, you know, it's not really our responsibility. However, the County of Santa Cruz is a permitting agency. Any well that's drilled in this county needs a permit from the County of Santa Cruz. So, and this well ordinance specifically addresses this authority, a permit authority of the county, and says that if there's an emergency declared, no more permits for wells will be issued where these wells will, you know, make the problem more severe. So, really the process should be that the Board of Supervisors declares the emergency, that they refuse to issue any more well permits, and then if somebody wants to get a well permit in Pajaro Valley or in Soquel Creek Water District, what they do is they come to the county and they say, please give us a permit. And if the county won't do it, then the agency or the particular individual sues the county for a writ of mandate to get the permit, rather than having me as an individual citizen sue the county to enforce the law in the first place. So it's a matter of process. If you have a law, enforce it. You know, it shouldn't be up to private citizens so the process is turned around here backward.
Okay, there's a few things I want to get into that you brought up. One is the issue of a lawsuit. I want to talk about, you currently have a lawsuit. You've already filed a lawsuit against the County of Santa Cruz Board of Supervisors for
a writ of mandate to require the Board of Supervisors to perform their ministerial duty under Gary Patton's well ordinance to declare an emergency, because the test to declare an emergency, which requires them to do it, has been met and exceeded as of June of 1998, and it's continuously been so.
Well, if this change in the language occurs, will it still be, will the suit be moot?
Yeah, because there'll be a different law.
Okay.
That's why I refiled the suit.
Okay. I want to get back to that in a moment and also talk about...
And also, and also as a way to, you know, bring this before the public. And, you know, this is very analogous to a substance abuse problem, you know, where you know, the first thing we have to break through in a substance abuse problem is denial. So the pathology of this disease is just like we're in the denial stage of a substance abuse problem. Now, the substance happens to be groundwater, but the results of the abuse of this groundwater and the, you know, the economic stimulation and you know, it's very analogous to you know, other types of substances. So I see myself as an instrumentality helping this community work its way through this denial of this particular substance abuse problem.
Okay.
And and the lawsuit is one way to do that. Appearance on this program is another.
All right. You are watching Voices. This is Community Television Channel 27. Tonight we're talking about our own inconvenient truth, as our guest, Douglas Deach, calls it in his article, in his opinion piece about it, right?
Yes.
That it's an inconvenient truth, basically, as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, that it has to do with the fact that we are using a lot of the water. A lot of the water is going to agriculture, and that somehow we need to regulate or call attention to the fact that more water is being taken out of our ground than is being replenished by natural means. And therefore, as we take water out of the ground, salt water gets sucked into the ground underneath us, which is useless to us, and that 90% of this water that we're using to suck it out goes to agriculture, and somehow we have to address this. I want to give out our phone number because this is a call-in program. If you have any, particularly any of you local government officials or who want to call in and address this issue, our number here is 425-8844. So please give us a call. We were talking about the abuse, like drug abuse. We were linking. You were linking the abuse of water to the abuse of drugs and being in denial and having all those symptoms of an addict. Exactly how are we abusing water? I mean, if we haven't said it already, can you get a little more? We're using it. Many people would say, okay, look, we're growing food here. We're feeding people. We are bringing money into the county. We're bringing resources in. We're paying people. These companies are paying taxes to the county. They're helping to build roads, and they're helping people to come and get jobs and build houses and pay more taxes and build more roads and things like that. So how exactly are we as a group of Central Coast residents abusing water?
Well, I don't know about the roads. We have a little problem with fixing our roads and building some new ones. But the model of the economy that we have now, which is using up this water in the way it's doing, is like, for example, the average farm worker is only producing $32,000 revenue, according to the EIS done for the Pajaro Valley Water Management Basin Management Plan, is only producing $32,000 for his employer.
Per year?
Yeah, per year. So this job slot, this farm worker job slot, is only producing $32,000 for the employer. This farm worker family is only making $18,000 gross income for their family. So in an area where the median price home is $700,000, there's no way that a family can live on $18,000. The $32,000 that's produced for the employer is not even a living wage in and of itself. So this is not and this is what is dominating our South County economy. So if we use this water unsustainably and we use it up, when it's gone, it's just kind of like the gold rush or something. It's like a boom time strawberries, but then when the water plays out, then we have nothing left. So what I would like to see is for us to create an economy here that uses our water and this resource sustainably. And so basically, my thesis is that we have exceeded what is a reasonable agricultural carrying capacity in this area. And this is, caused stress on every economic, social, and natural system that we have here.
Well, what would you have us do? What do you suggest that we should do as a community?
Basically use our water supply as the gauge to determine what is the sustainable economy here. And what I think is going to happen, I mean, we have to cut back agricultural production here. And in this two-part op-ed that I wrote in the Sentinel, I've explained specifically how that can be done by basically creating, I'm jumping here to the solution, which would be basically a land acquisition fallowing on the scale of Coast Dairies Ranch, around 7,500 acres from Elkhorn Slough to La Selva Beach on the ocean side of Highway 1, that I would propose be acquired and fallowed. And what's not commonly known about the water solution in Pajaro is that when this land is fallowed, or when the land pumping is stopped in this 8,000 acres, the water supply in the basin, groundwater supply, sustainable supply, doubles. Now
why would that be?
Well, that's because of the fact assumption that has been operative in the Pajaro Valley Water Management Plan since 1993. Now, that's a technical memorandum. That's what the engineers say. So, this is.
Okay. Let's say that we were able to do this. First, I'd like to, at some point to explain this Coast Dairies Ranch and what that agreement is. But in order to sort of reverse or at least slow down our overdraft of the water, you're suggesting that 8,000 acres of coastal land, I guess west of Highway 1, right, in Pajaro region, that this land be acquired somehow by the county government, maybe, and then allowed to be fallowed or unproductive, or nothing is being groomed or grown there, right?
Well, right now, the way the basin management plan is supposed to work is that irrespective of anything else, whether it's a pipeline or anything else, the biggest part of solving the problem, the one step that necessarily must be taken, is that all agricultural well pumping has to be stopped in this 8,000 acres area.
In the,
okay.
that one
Whether we continue growing or not growing, irrespective of what happens, we have to stop the pumping of agricultural wells in 8,000 acres, this 8,000 acre area.
What percentage is that?
That's around 25% of the agricultural lands in this Pajaro area. Okay, so, but the thing, the hydrological effect of that, according to the engineers, is that when we stop pumping there, that the sustainable yield of the groundwater basin doubles from basically 24,000 acre feet. I know we're getting into figures. From 24,000 acre feet to 50,000 acre feet. It's a huge increase in the sustainable yield of that water supply.
Because that's how much water would be being drawn to ordinarily.
I'm not a scientist. This is just what the most critical fact assumption that everything depends on. And the reason it does is because you gain, by doubling the water, by stopping pumping, you gain 26,000 acre feet. Now, how much is that? Well, there's going to be a pipeline built to import water, and the amount of water that's going to be imported through that pipeline is around annually, on an average, is half that amount of water. So really the solution is we stop pumping at the coast, and that produces twice the amount of water that the pipeline is going to. Therefore, stopping pumping ag wells at the coast is the real solution, because that produces twice the amount of water locally, sustainably, right here every year, and stops all the saltwater intrusion than the pipeline is supposed to bring in. So when people are thinking, what is the solution? It's not the pipeline. It's stopping pumping in this area.
Okay.
Now, there are two ways to stop, at least two ways to stop pumping in the area. One way to stop pumping in the area is what this agency plans to do now, which is stop pumping there and then bring this extra 26,000 acre feet of water from the rest of the basin and the imported water all out to the coastal area and keep the model of the economy the same. Keep on growing strawberries, keep everything the same as it is.
Okay.
And hope that we can import the water and hope that this fact assumption is correct, that our water doubles, and keep everything going just the way it is now.
These 8,000 acres along the coast that you're suggesting go fallow, you say perhaps uses maybe 25% of the agricultural water.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to figure out the math here. I mean, I don't want to get too deep into it because it can get very complex.
Yeah, but it's all actually on the website, and I have it all, specified out there. So
your website, which is begentlewiththeearth.com,
Yeah.
or .org
or .net.
or .net.
And the article that I had, the two-part op-ed in the Sentinel, was edited. So it's called Our Inconvenient Truth, a full op-ed that has all the references and documentation and graphics is on the website. So
how much would that help us actually? This okay, I don't want to get into the math too much because it makes my head spin.
No, I understand.
But when we talk about this 8,000 acre area along the coast, if it were fallow, that somehow we would. It sounds like we'd save 25% of the water, but you're also saying that it would completely make up for the water. So I'm a little confused.
Well, there are two aspects to fallowing. There are two different, water benefits by fallowing, acquiring and fallowing this land.
Which is to not use it for
One
farming.
part is conservation. Each acre of berries uses around 3 acre feet per year. So if you have 8,000 acres times 3 acre feet per year, that conserves 24,000 acre feet of water.
Okay, what's an acre foot? Explain
An
that.
acre foot is 1 acre.
1
That's
acre.
It's 400.
1 foot of water.
I think it's 326,000 gallons, but it's 1 foot of water covering 1 acre.
Covering 1 acre. Okay.
Yeah.
So
by acquiring and fallowing this land, we conserve 3 times 8,000 or 24,000 acre feet of water. We conserve that.
Yes.
Okay. Additionally, by fallowing this and not pumping, we double the basin yield. We go from 24,000 to 50,000 acre feet. So we gain sustainable yield 26,000 acre feet.
Okay.
So we conserve 24, we gain 26,000. So the water benefit of acquiring this land and fallowing it is 50,000 acre feet. Okay? And that makes up for the whole overdraft. The two
50,000.
components being conservation, 24,000 acre feet, and new supply, 26,000 acre feet. Add those two together is 50,000 acre feet, and that solves the problem and ends all the saltwater intrusion.
Would it be correct to presume, from what you're saying, that we're sucking in 50,000 acre feet of seawater to replace this,
No,
the water?
the overdraft is different than the resource loss. It's kind of almost like a 3-to-1 ratio. When our overdraft is something around 45, 50,000 acre feet over. The sustainable yield is 24,000 and we're using 70,000.
Right.
So that's 46,000 acre foot overdraft. The overdraft causes 15,000 acre foot of resource loss. So it's roughly, if you overdraft 3 gallons, you lose 1 gallon to the salt water. Yeah, so the resource loss is 15,000, the overdraft is 46,000.
Okay.
So it's not like a 1-for-1 loss.
Now, so some of the things I've heard discussed to address these problems with our water. One, you mentioned the pipeline issue, and I'd like to get into some explanation of what that is and what it means, and the desalination plants that are planned or being built. And I see you have some graphics here.
But may I do something first? Because I just wanted to, I said the two hydrological benefits of the acquisition and fallowing of this land is 50,000 acre feet. But there are benefits other than hydrological benefits. For example, this 8,000 acres represents some of the most valuable critical habitat in the world. It includes the Elkhorn Slough, Watsonville Wetland System. If you were to ask Mark Silberstein, who runs the Elkhorn Slough Foundation, not the foundation, but the other entity, he describes this as the center of the universe. This land here is, in terms of ecological habitat, highest bird count in the country. I mean, anybody knows about Elkhorn Slough, Watsonville Wetlands. So there's that benefit, okay? So there's hydrological benefit, there's ecological, environmental benefits. This is in the same sense that Coast Aries Ranch. It's an acquisition of equal scale, 7,500 acres. This is oceanfront coastal access. So there's that benefit. Then also there's the benefit of this being a way to preserve in perpetuity the thousands of acres of farmland out there in an agricultural reserve, and also the balance of the 30,000 acres of farmland in our region, because this supplies sustainable water and will keep this all, the rest of the balance of the lands in production with local water. So there's many more benefits other than hydrological benefits that this is like a great deal.
Well, then what would you say to those people who think in this way? They think that, okay, look, the most important thing for us to have is an economic base, and that the only way we can have an economic base is to have industry or some kind of commerce that, on a large scale, that benefits the county. And agriculture, whatever they're growing, whether they're growing berries or not, they're bringing money into the county and into the region, and this money is going to is getting into the system by going to wages and to taxes that benefit the county, and wages to people who would otherwise, I guess, be unemployed, I mean, or working somewhere else. So what would you say to those folks who say, wait a minute, if you mess with this at all, it's going to throw our economy off, and we're all going to our heads are going to blow up, and we're going to catch on fire?
Well, that was part of the cost analysis that was done by the Bureau of Reclamation in response to my suggestion that this plan be followed. And what the Bureau of Reclamation came up with in the environmental impact statement was that if this land were fallowed, we would lose $160 million of revenue, and we would lose 5,000 farm worker jobs. So if you were to divide 5,000 into 160 million, you will find that each one of these farm workers produces, as I mentioned earlier, only $32,000 gross revenue, ag revenue for his employer. And each one of these farm worker families is only living on $18,000 per year yearly average income.
This is ag revenue above their salaries?
Well, no. This is out of the $32,000. 18 goes, to
over half of it.
To their salary.
Labor,
And nobody can live. No family can live for $18,000 in Santa Cruz without being subsidized in terms of housing, in terms of, there are different ways for subsidies, schools, health, you have to go to the emergency rooms. So each one of these jobs is basically a loser, net loser for the community. So what I would like to see is other jobs, these jobs retooled into living wage jobs. We have an opportunity to remodel our economy at the same time this acquisition, in a phased basis. This doesn't happen on the turn of a dime, but to basically remodel our economy based on sustainable water policy, which would and create more jobs and create more housing and retool these 5,000 jobs into 5,000 living wage jobs. And assuming 3 people or 4 people per family, you have 20,000 people who might be very positively affected by a retooling of this employment out of low-income, unsustainable job slot into a living wage job slot and decent housing. And I see this happening in the Watsonville area, because that's where they really need this. This could happen on 500 acres in Watsonville, by the way.
Wow. You have some graphics here that, first of all, show, I believe, the seawater intrusion levels in Pajaro Valley area.
Yeah, I don't know how well we'll be able to see them.
Well, maybe if you can hold it up, maybe camera 3
Yeah.
can get it here. And we can explain a little bit what we're talking about. And so just hold it and point it at this camera. Hold it still.
I would also refer you, please, to the Be Gentle with the Earth website and the the op-ed piece, Our Convenient Truth.
Our Inconvenient Truth.
Our Inconvenient Truth, excuse me. And basically, this area here shows the area of saltwater intrusion. And what I'd like you to notice here is, see, right up here in this area is where
Can you get a little tighter on that and focus a little sharper?
this is where La Selva Beach is.
Hold it still, yeah.
In La Selva, and the Soquel Creek Water District basically shares the groundwater with Pajaro. So this is not commonly known. Right up in here?
Okay.
Yeah, it's hard for me to do this. At least I'm not shaking too badly here. And that's what people should appreciate in Soquel Creek is that this problem in Pajaro and the overuse of water is also affecting the water supply and saltwater intrusion in this area, in the La Selva Beach, Soquel Creek Water District area.
So this graphic comes from the Pajaro Valley Water Management Agency?
Yes, these are all. This was during a presentation that Pajaro Valley Water Management Agency went around to different agencies to describe what the water problem was all about.
All right.
And
some of the solutions that have been raised are the issue about the pipeline and the desal plant, and I see you have a graphic about the pipeline.
Basically the current plan, if you see this shows where the saltwater intruded area is, okay?
The darker area,
Yeah,
it's hard
right,
to see on and there's a lighter area here
right
too.
in here. And this graphic here shows the present proposed solution by the agency, which basically shows a pipeline bringing water from other parts of the basin and over the hill right out to this area and distributing it out here. Wait a second. To this area of saltwater intruded. So everything remains the same out here. The pumping is stopped in this area, and water is distributed, and the whole model of the economy remains the same.
Okay.
And nothing changes.
Many would ask, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with we're replacing the water by pumping in water from where? San Luis Reservoir?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Is remember, only a third of the solution comes from here. 2/3 of the solution comes from the rest of the basin and local water.
The regular groundwater that we get from the rains?
Well, no, when we stop pumping out here, they're saying that the sustainable yield doubles. So yeah, most of it is just local water.
All right.
So basically, So
you're not really opposed to this pipeline project. Would it be a part of the solution?
Well, yeah. What I'm interested in doing is using our natural systems within their reasonable carrying capacity. Have that be what we do, instead of figuring out how to solve our shortages and problems through technology. Let's invest in our natural systems and live within our means hydrologically, and then the rest of our problems with our economy and housing, and they will all fall into place.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yes.
What about this?
I do think so.
What about this?
It's called Be Gentle with the Earth.
Okay.
Live within our means.
Yeah.
I know it's a revolutionary concept, but we
Yeah,
can start
for many
right here and
people
try
it
to
is.
do this.
Yeah.
Like, for example, let me give you an example that is analogous to this too. Now, Bill and Melinda Gates have just dropped around $32 billion into medicine. Okay, all their money they put into medicine. okay? And Buffett, he thinks that's a good idea. He goes, I'm going to go along with Gates. I'm going to drop my $30 billion in medicine. Now we got $60 million in medical cures for these diseases. Diseases are no more than the symptoms, the manifestations of natural systems in disarray. The real cause of the problem, as global warming, as we have, we'll have more and more diseases. We'll have cures, but really, if we want to address these diseases, we have to address the root cause, which is the natural systems, the sustainability of our natural systems. So I would like to see Buffett, let him put in his $32 billion in the environment. For example, there was an article in the San Jose Mercury, which is on my website, pogonip.org, which says that for an investment of $5 billion, we could acquire enough critical habitat in the world to save 60 to 70% of all terrestrial species for $5 billion. That addresses, yeah. So let's make some investments like that. This investment of buying and fallowing this land can be a first step.
Okay, people would ask, where would you get the money to do this, and how could we come up with this money in this short budget? We don't have any.
Well, that's the beauty of this, is it all pays for itself. Because if in fact the assumption is correct, well, first of all, the Bureau of Reclamation, EIS, stated that the cost of acquiring this land would be $29,000 an acre. So 8,000 times 29,000 is 239,000 or something like that. Let's say $230,000. Excuse me, $230 million. Excuse me. That's what it would cost to acquire this land. I've just told you that the 7.5 desal plants, 15,000 acre feet at the cost of desal, is $300 million a year resource loss that we're losing. So we're losing like $70 million more a year at desal replacement rate before operations and maintenance than it would cost to acquire this land. Okay? Now, how do we acquire it? Okay. If in fact the basin yield goes from 24,000 to 50,000 acre feet, as this fact assumption says, we double our groundwater, and we have 50,000 acre feet of water product that right now Pajaro Valley Water Management Agency charges for this water. If, for example, they were to charge $300 an acre foot for 50,000 acre feet of water, that creates $15 million a year revenue.
How much do they charge now?
Oh, I think it's maybe 200 or 150 or something like that.
Okay.
But again, this water would be used regionally. It would address the city of Santa Cruz's problems, Soquel Creek's problems. We distribute this water all over the county, so that, it would be paid for by everybody basically to solve all their water problems. So we have 50,000 acre feet of water that we're selling countywide, solving everybody's problem for $300 an acre foot. That's $15 million a year yearly revenue. So $15 million a year yearly revenue with type of tax-free financing is easily enough to pay for roughly $200 million acquisition cost of this land. Okay. So it pays for itself basically through water revenue. Okay. And then now the other question is, okay, you've paid for the land with the water revenue, but how do we replace this $160 million of ag revenue and these 5,000 farm worker jobs? Right. So the way I propose to do that is basically to, of this 8,000 acres, of that, 500 acres of that would be a quote-unquote development opportunity, which would be annexed to the city of Watsonville, 500 acres. Why Watsonville? Because Watsonville is an enterprise zone, and job creation there is they need housing, they need good living wage jobs. It's a perfect place to have economic development like this. So on 250 acres, next to the city of Watsonville, of this 8,000 acres, that's going to be a free development site, 5,000 jobs can be created easily, okay? On another 250 acres, 5,000 living units can be created. So we can retool these 5,000 farm worker jobs into 5,000 living wage jobs and 5,000 decent living units on 500 acres in the city of Watsonville. Whoa. And then who's going to do the jobs? Yeah. Okay. Well, what I propose to do with there is to basically, I think the University of California should relocate and do their expansion in Watsonville. And I think that possibly a company like, for example, Google, with a joint venture with Stanford, because the Google founders are from Stanford. Stanford has a presence in the Monterey Bay at Hopkins Marine Station. So let's say hypothetically, throw it out there. Google, Stanford, UCSC together use this 500 acre opportunity site to expand UCSC, have a research and development park for Google, and an ocean center, for study and the health of the oceans, because that's really what we should be doing in this area. I mean, it's in terms of natural systems and health and the preservation of natural systems. We should start right here with a Monterey-based sanctuary with these resources we have at UCSC, and we can do this in Watsonville. So that's what I think.
We're here with Douglas Deach tonight. I'm Mark Halfmoon. You're watching Voices, and we're talking about the issue of our water, of the groundwater, and most of us are aware of how the saltwater, seawater intrusion is coming into our aquifers. And Doug seems to be a person who's very interested in this and wants to make some changes to preserve our land. Are you running for office, Doug?
Am I running for office?
Yeah.
Well, I like to say, I have a little joke. Yes, I've run for supervisor the last 3 times, attempting to do what the Christian Lord Jesus never even tried, which is running on water.
Running on water.
Running on water, yes, unsuccessfully.
Okay.
So am I running for office? What I'll do whatever is necessary to bring this issue to the public, to have our board of supervisors, I'm looking directly in the camera now and I'm speaking to any supervisor who might be watching, to observe the law, to protect our water resources, and if it takes me running for supervisor again, I'll be happy to do that.
Mm-hmm. And we should also say that in this case, any Santa Cruz County supervisor or government and representative or employee is totally welcome to contact us here at Voices.
Right now, please.
To come on and give another point of view about this.
Well, yeah, as a matter of fact, I've only had one response from any supervisor. Anybody, no one has said, Doug, you're wrong. I just basically hear silence and I must be out of my mind. But the only official response I've heard from any supervisor, and I won't mention him by name, but when I went before them and got the first answer, I said, it doesn't say the Board of Supervisors shall declare a groundwater emergency. This particular supervisor's response was, according to county codes, shall doesn't mean shall. There's a special definition for shall.
Well, that all depends on what the definition of is.
Well, so actually what I did, I thought in response to this, what I might do is, contact the author of the well ordinance, Gary Patton, which I did by email, and he responded that when he wrote the ordinance, shall, as far as he was concerned, meant shall to him, but maybe they passed some new definition of shall I'm not aware about at the Board of Supervisors.
Okay, then what does shall mean if it doesn't mean shall? Does it mean perhaps, should, or?
I can only tell you what shall means at the Stanford Law School.
Okay.
And it means just what Gary said, so
Okay.
I'll go with that.
Okay, what about, all right, so at this point, we're kind of winding down in our time, but now that we know some of these things and we have your website, if we want to get more information, can people contact you through that website? Can they respond to you or ask you questions through the website?
Absolutely.
This is BeGentleWithTheEarth.
BeGentleWithTheEarth.com, yes,
Okay.
And excuse me.
Oh, I was just going to ask you, what kind of things would you like for people in the public to do? You wanted to bring this issue to the public. You wanted to inform the public about it. How would you like for the public to respond?
Well, and I'm looking in the camera again here. Individually, there's no one person who will do anything by themselves. And I pretty much, been trying to do this by myself. I want other people to be aware of it. And so I filed this lawsuit. And that lawsuit's sitting down there waiting to be served. And I'm not going to serve it myself. I'm consulting now with the Soquel Creek Water District, members of the board there. And there will be people in this community who will have to be interested in this and join me or take it over. I don't have to even be involved in it. It's my mission to, basically try to bring this to the public and have them be aware of it, but, I can't do anything by myself, so I'll need help from other people in the public to do this.
Are there other people who are like maybe politically involved locally who support what you're trying to do?
I hope so, and I hope that this show and the different efforts I'm trying to make with, the websites and the lawsuits and the grand jury complaints and the editorials will, pique the interest in some people to, get up and help me with this. And one of the point, I kind of like to just to make this point. There's no law in the county codes that says the Board of Supervisors shall join with the City of Santa Cruz in the lawsuit against UCSC over water. Now, UCSC, city has a problem with water. UCSC, they got to extend water up there. You know how much water UCSC uses in total, completely? UCSC uses less than 200 acres of strawberries after they expand, total.
Per year?
Per year. There's no overdraft. And it's around 500 acre-feet of water. And I have to say that in the world today, there is no better utilization of 500 acre-feet of water than is being used for the educational research mission that UCSC is doing in terms of the ocean, in terms of outer space. I mean, there's nothing that says the Board of Supervisors has to join that lawsuit. There's nothing that says the Board of Supervisors, has to help, the Board of Supervisors shall help Felton Water be publicly acquired. The Felton Water, which they're doing, the Felton Water Company involves around 800 acre-feet of water, 1,300 customers. The balance of this county is 250,000 people. We're losing 15,000 acre-feet of water, and I just, but there's an ordinance that says that, but.
Okay. Hey, well, thanks for coming, Doug.
Has it been an hour already?
You're saying that, yeah, it has. But people in Felton and places like that, all over, where people are getting more concerned about the use of water, that's a good thing, right?
Well, yeah, they're concerned about the foreign expropriation of water.
Okay.
Okay. Anyway.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us, and you know how to get in touch with Doug from the website begentlewiththeearth.org or com. Next week we'll be having some more exciting talk and information. It may either be with former government officials or maybe some kind of health thing that we're working on. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me,
Yeah,
Mark.
sure.
I really appreciate it.